What's going on, guys? One of the two fat guys and Skivvies bringing you another Summoner's War video. And today I want to talk about runes. This disclaimer, this is going to be like a real beginner Runes 101 class, all right? Looking at this with the aspect of people who really are brand spanking new to the game, don't really understand it at all. That's what this is going to be geared for. But what I will do is, and I'll do this right now, I'm going to go into the repeat battle and we'll fire up. I'm just going to auto farm here some runes, and I will minimize that, let that go in the background, and we'll talk about runes here. And once we're done with the description for all the new folks, we'll go in there and see what we got from this kind of auto farm run, and I'll kind of go through, my thought process on what you keep, what you sell, what's worth powering up before you sell it, etc., etc. And we'll kind of use some of the examples of what we pull. So you might be interested in that if you're familiar with the game. You can shoot towards the end of the video for that. But for anybody who's new, yeah, let's talk about runes. So like Summoner's War is two things, right? It's part of it is really fun. Like the fun aspect of it is collecting monsters, right? So monsters or units in the game. So you can see I'll go here to the collection. There's a ton of different units that you can sort here by all the different elements, and this is half of the fun of the game, right? Is being able to summon these units, and you pull them up, and they're just basically showing you here in their unawakened form and then here in their awakened form. And the difference you can tell is obviously their picture gets a little different. So like if you look like here, we'll just tap on the Fire Neostone Fighter, which is Trevor. So you can see in his unawakened form, he just is a Neostone Fighter of the fire element. And then if I tap his picture in the corner, you can see he gets his name. He's Trevor, and now the stars are purple pink there, and you can see his he's got like a different look to him, like a different transmog, if you will. So this is the awakened form, and what most people refer to the units in the game that they're using, because you don't generally use a unit that's unawakened. When they're unawakened, their stats are lower. When you awaken them, they get better stats, right? So it's kind of how we refer to it. But we'll get more on units and things like that, and we'll do spotlights and discuss more about that in future videos. But this is about runes. So what are we talking about when we're talking about runes? So if we go here, and I'm just going to do this to bring up the description here. So runes are, all of your monsters have stats, right? And the runes make the stats better. So actually, before we get into this, and I will use one of my Lucians here. This is my fat Lucian. All right, so this all of your monsters have stats. So you can see here, as we're looking at Lucian, his stats, he's max level 40, and you can see HP, it says 9,225. That's his base level HP. So if he doesn't have any runes on him whatsoever, he has 9,225 hit points. And then his attack power, his base raw attack power is 900. His base raw defense is 461. His base speed is 103. All right. Now, the other stats below that are being affected by runes currently. The crit rate, the crit damage, the resistance, and the accuracy. But monsters do, innately get a certain base level that they have without runes, and then the runes impact these. Where you can see next to the main stats, where you can see the green additions, that's all coming from runes, right? So essentially, like, what are runes? If we tap here on the rune section, the rune grid will pop up, and we can see that there are 6 individual runes, right? So we'll tap here, that's rune slot 1, rune slot 2, rune slot 3, rune slot 4, 5, and 6. So these are our 6 runes that we can put onto a unit. Now, what do these do? What's their purpose? So again, we're going to go in here to this description. So these are all the different runes, right? These are all the different types of runes that you can get in the game. And you get these by farming various dungeons, which is what I'm currently doing in the background. So you can see here, right, the first rune set they list is energy, and it tells you, great, this is, I tapped the question mark to just bring this up. This is just kind of like basic help, right? And this will tell you energy, engraving 2 pieces, increases monsters' HP by 15%, and then it also lets you know that doing multiple sets will stack. So you can get a total of 45% HP if you put 6 energy runes on a monster. If you put 2, you'll get 15% bonus HP. You have to do 2 for an energy set. Runes will either give you bonuses based on equipping them in multiples of 2 or 4. All right? So energy is a 2 set, 15% to HP. Guard is another 2 set, 15% to defense. Swift is a 4 piece set, which gives you 25% to speed. And this also tells you where you can farm them from. Okay, it tells you the scenario that they drop from, and it tells you the Kairos dungeon location that they drop from. Blade is a 2 set that gives you 12% crit rate. Rage is a 4 set that gives you 40% crit damage. Focus is a 2 set that gives you 20% accuracy. Endure, 2 set, 20% resistance. Fatal, 4 set, 35% attack. Despair, 4 set, 25% stun chance. Vampire, 4 set, 35% self-heal. It's kind of like it's vampire. So you deal damage, 35% of the damage you will heal from. Okay? And then Violent, the most OP rune set in the game, 4 set, 22% chance to instantly gain an additional turn. All right, as it tells you, the chance of gaining consecutive turns will decrease by 45% chance each from your initial 22% chance. This is something that has changed over time because this game has become notoriously known for you need violent runes. Violent runes is their OP. You just have to have violent runes. The majority of your monsters benefit from violent runes. And it's just because this is a turn-based, kind of strategy RPG game, and turns just that's everything. So that's why speed and violent is just their key, because the faster you are, the more turns you take, and if you are lucky enough to get this 22% chance to proc an additional turn, you take a turn and then boom, instantly you get to take another turn. It's devastating. It can be super devastating. Not only that, even monsters that don't deal damage, support type monsters and etc., they benefit from violent runes because you reduce cooldowns on skills that you want to get up more and more. So just violent runes, really, really key. So anyways, continuing, Nemesis runes, it's a 2 set. This one's interesting. So this one fills up your attack bar in proportion to lost HP. So it gives you the stats here. So for every 7% of HP that you lose, you will gain 4% of attack bar, right? So if you lose 14% HP, you'll gain 8% of attack bar. And so the idea, and of course it tells you that this will also stack up the rune set bonus, okay? What is interesting about this set, this is kind of a way, if you build a tanky unit with a lot of HP, and you put Nemesis runes on it, especially if it's a unit that can heal. People can try to take out a unit really quickly, but if you build it really tanky with a lot of HP and you put Nemesis runes on it, then that monster, even if it doesn't have a lot of speed on it and you're not able to take that turn before them, by getting hit and losing that HP, as long as you don't die, then you can gain your attack bar a little bit quicker, and you might be able to get a turn faster and get a big heal off, which effectively negates the turn that the other person did. So it's just it's another way the game attempted to give you some tools to be able to take turn 2, right? So it's interesting. Will is another 2-set rune that is in this kind of, if you're going to get outsped and you're going to have to take turn 2, will runes are really big. And these are very popular ones in the game. I would say violent runes and will runes are probably 2 of the most popular runes in the game, especially for PvP content. Will runes are huge because if you equip 2 pieces of them, it gives you 1 turn immunity. So this will also stack. So if you equip 6 will runes, you'll have 3 turns immunity right at the beginning in the form of a buff that can be removed. So just be aware of that. But yeah, so will runes, really, really good and beneficial. Shield runes, they're another underrated rune, I think. Shield runes 2-set, and what it does is it puts a shield buff, which is 15% of your HP onto the entire team. So, if you've got an arena team with 4 people and one of your monsters has a shield set, if that monster has like a ton of HP, it will create a shield buff that will last 3 turns, and it's going to be 15% of that monster's total HP, and that will go on to each member of your team. And it's really nice because it kind of just is a way of giving some additional HP in a way, temporarily, to your team. It's just another tool to kind of allow you to survive that first turn. And you never know if the units that you're going to be facing will have these runes or not until you start the battle and see if their runes have those buffs on them, right? Revenge is another 2-set rune. This one gives you a 15% chance to counterattack. The counterattack only deals 75% of the basic damage, okay? And this will stack as well, so you can go up to 45% chance to revenge. Revenge can be really interesting, especially like revenge runes on things that either debuff or strip on skill 1, because skill 1 is what the monster will just default use when they're revenging. So it's kind of an interesting set. Destroy is a set that's not used a ton. As you can see, it's very wordy here with how it's described. Essentially, and it gives you all the numbers here, but essentially it's a 2-set, and what it does is it destroys a portion of max HP based on damage that you deal. So you deal damage, and then a portion of the damage that you deal will get reduced in 2 different ways. So if you deal X amount of damage, that damage will come off like normal, but then you'll notice a portion of that damage lost will go red. And the red is a permanent loss of HP, where the enemy, your opponent, will not be able to heal that damage that was lost. So this can be really nice to use in people who like to put stall teams up and teams that heal a lot. It's a really nice way of doing that. It will also, affect monsters that deal damage based on their HP. As you start destroying their HP, they'll deal less damage because they'll have less HP, to deal damage with. So it's an interesting rune set. It's not used all that often, but in certain situations, it can be very effective. Then you have these following rune sets. These ones are available from the Rift dungeons, which is slightly different from the Kairos dungeons. These are fight runes, which will give 8% attack buff to everybody on the team. Determination gives 8% defense. I don't want to say a buff, but it's like an innate, while they're in whatever content, whether it's a PvP battle or a PvE battle, they're giving just bonus. It's like having an extra, 8% substat on a rune that's just there, but for everybody. So it's kind of cool. Enhance is for HP. Accuracy does 10% accuracy. Intolerance does 10% resistance. So those are all of the different runes in the game, what they do, how many pieces you need to equip of them. All right. So you've got all of those different runes. So now you know you've got 6 total runes, right? And they all have the different slots. You can see the runes face in the different directions, like it's on a clock, right? Like that's, 12 o'clock, right? That's 6 o'clock down there. And then, you've got kind of like, I don't know, between maybe like 1:30, and then like 4:30 down here. So you get the idea. But so each rune has its own slot. Now, when you're farming these, to farm the good runes, you got to go into the Kairos dungeon where I was. You can farm these runes from the scenario stages, and you can get very specific slots from those scenario stages. The problem is that you won't get the highest quality runes. So you can see this rune up here in the left where it says Resistant Rage Rune. You can see that particular rune has a bunch of stars above it. All right, so there's 6 stars there. That is the highest graded rune. So runes come in grades all the way from 1 star all the way up to 6 star. Once you hit a certain point in the game, you'll very quickly get to a point where everything will be 4 star, and then everything will be 5 star. And then really it won't take that long for you to get to the point where you can farm the dungeons that will only drop 6 star runes, and then you'll only be choosing from 6 star runes. All right, but that's grading on runes. Okay, then you've got quality of runes. Now, this one will be a little bit harder to explain from this aspect, but you can see this particular rune that we're looking at. It says Legend in the right-hand corner, and it's orange. All right, so essentially, runes will come in kind of like quality, right? So again, the starring is the grade, but now we're talking about quality. Now, the quality of the rune, runes can be anywhere from normal, where the rune will appear white, to legend here, where they're orange. And they go normal, which will be white rune, and then magic, which will be a green, and then rare, which will be blue, and then a purple rune, like you can see here. This is down below, is a purple rune, which is a hero level rune. And then you've got the legendary rune, which is that orange color. Now, what do these mean? And this is where it gets a little bit extra confusing. So, a rune that is normal or white, essentially, that rune will only have what is up at the top. So in this rune in particular, where it says attack plus 160, that is the primary stat of this rune. Now this is a slot 1 rune. All slot 1 runes will have attack as a primary stat. Now this rune happens to have an innate stat underneath it of resistance 8%. All right, so this is a random thing. Not all runes will have this. So you can see my slot 2 rune, for example, does not have an innate stat. All right, but my slot 1 rune does. So runes can get this innate stat. And this is just kind of like a bonus stat. If you get it, it's a bonus. Then you can see underneath the rune, in this rune example, there's attack 11%, crit damage 18%, HP 17%, and crit rate 9%. All right, so there are, we call those substats. Those are 4 substats, okay? Stats that are below the rune. Now these are random. So again, on a slot 1 rune, which we're looking at, the first attack stat is always going to be there. no matter what the rune type, it's always on a slot 1 going to be attack. Underneath it, that innate is random, and then everything else under there is random. So when you farm, when you run the dungeons like I'm running in the background, it's probably done already. Again, we'll check that at the end and see what we got. I'll go through that. But it can be anything, any of these different stats. The only thing on slot 1 that it can't roll is defense. So you'll never see defense as a substat on slot 1. All right, not everybody knows that per se, but I think most experienced players understand that. And there's something like that for just about every slot, or at least the 1 through 5, I believe. Now, within the substats, back to the quality. On a normal rune, all you will see is the top primary stat, which again, on a slot 1 will always be attack. And then whether it has an innate, it could have an innate on a normal rune. But then everything underneath where it says attack, crit damage, HP, crit rate, none of those would be there on a normal rune. Okay? On a magic rune, you would have the primary stat and then just the attack. You would have just one substat, and that's a green rune. On a blue rune or a rare rune, you would have 2. On a purple rune, like here's a purple rune, you can see there are 3 substats underneath. And then on the legendary orange rune, you have all 4 substats. So that's kind of like your progression. Now, to make things more complicated, you can power up the runes. So you've probably noticed that top rune says plus 15. This bottom rune here says plus 9. Let me just move this out of the way. So again, powering these runes up is, where those pluses is coming from. So a white rune will only be white when you haven't powered it up. Once you've powered it up to plus 3, it then becomes green. But what will happen on a white rune is it will just reveal the first stat. So in both of these cases, the first stat was attack percentage. All right. So if these runes were originally white, once you upgraded them and they became plus 3, then the attack substat underneath would be revealed. But the number wouldn't be as high as these numbers are here. I'll explain that. On a green rune, for example, the attack would already be present. Now, when you plus 3'd, when you upgraded the rune and made it go to plus 3, whatever was there for the attack would then get increased. Okay? And this process happens over and over again. On a blue rune, you'd have 2 stats that would already be shown and revealed to you. So then as you increased it to plus 3, one of the 2 stats. So again, if this top rune was a blue rune originally, the attack and the crit damage would have already been present. And then when it rolled to plus 3, when it got improved to plus 3, one of those 2 stats would have increased. And then when you upgraded it to plus 6, another one would have increased. So essentially, you look at it this way. Every 3 upgrades, every time you upgrade a rune 3 times, and hopefully I'll be able to show you that process with something that I farmed in the background. But when you upgrade something, every 3 times you upgrade it, either it will reveal a new stat to you, or if you already have stats existing, it will upgrade or increase one of those statistics. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So when you have runes that drop initially at a higher quality, so when you first receive them without upgrading them, if they're blue or purple or orange, then they're already going to have 2, 3, or 4 substats, and therefore when you upgrade them or increase their main property, every 3 times you do that, you will also be increasing your sub-property. So it makes sense that the better quality your initial rune was, the better your substats will be. Because in an example of a legendary rune, an orange rune initially, all 4 stats will be present, and so each time you increase it at 3, 6, 9, and 12, one of those stats will increase. Now, to make things more complicated, if they weren't already, it's all random. So it's not like the first, 3, it'll only be that first stat. So, like, for example, the attack could have rolled numerous times. It didn't, but it could have, right? Or the crit damage could have rolled numerous times. And in this case, it definitely did. And I can kind of go over that and explain to you how I know that as well, because it does get a little bit complicated when you're not seeing it happen right away. But essentially, what to take away from it is that the higher the quality, so depending on what color you get when you first receive the rune, increases the chance that you'll have better stats underneath the rune. Okay, you'll have better substats, potentially, the higher the quality is. Now, if that wasn't already complicated enough to make things worse, so again, it's all random as to what will increase. You could, get one stat could increase 4 times, or you could get each stat increase once. You could have 2 different stats increase twice, etc., etc. Okay. Now, on like the example below, that is a +9 Tenacious Violent rune. So that rune has the 3 substats. When I increase that to +12, a 4th one will appear. So those 3 runes will not improve anymore. Those ones have improved as much as they will, and then a 4th one will appear. Okay, and so that's why that 4th rune will only be appearing for the first time. It's not already there with the potential to get increased again. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to everybody with regards to the substats and the initial quality of the rune and why that's important. So there are ranges that everything can roll. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we're looking at the fresh runes, that you can kind of, determine like how well did something go. And that's why really when it comes to this game, the runes are so huge because they're what makes your units, your monsters better and more powerful. And so, getting the right runes and equipping the right runes is how you can kind of maximize those stats on that unit, right? So if you look at this particular unit back here again, so you can see the runes are adding an additional 5,124 HP, an additional 1,885 attack, an additional 151 defense, an additional 38 speed, and the runes are increasing his total crit rate to 93%, total crit damage to 229%, resistance at 23, and accuracy at 24. So those are all being affected by the runes that I've put on him here. Okay? And that's kind of like the whole purpose to the runes, is to make your monster more effective. And depending on what your monster is going to do, this one that we're looking at here, Lucian, is like one of the most famous OP monsters in the game. We'll do a showcase on him at some point to kind of explain why. But he's an attack type. You can see it says attack there next to his level. And that's what type of monster he is. So he is all about dealing damage. And so the important things with him is to give him a lot of attack power, a lot of crit rate, and a lot of crit damage. And that way he can deal maximum amount of damage. And the runes is what's going to help you to do this. All right. So that's kind of like a really quick, quick-ish runing 101. So let's go ahead and take a look and see where we are here. Yeah, so we've completed the rune farming. So let's take a look and see what we got. So we can see we got, you can do this auto farming battle here. I chose to go into dragons, and I got through my 10 battles. You can see from the time there, and it only took 11 and a half minutes to do that. So we go ahead and we can see all the runes here in the right hand part of the screen. So you can see we've got 3 purple ones and we've got 4 blue ones. We also have a rainbow mon that we got from this, and then we've got some of these transcendent symbols. All right, these are used for crafting runes, and we'll do a separate video on that. So from looking at these runes, we're seeing like, hey, you know, what did you get? Are any of these good, right? So here's the thing. Depending on what level you are in the game, this is going to vary. All right, so I'm coming at this from... I'm gonna come at this from 2 different directions, all right? If you're brand new... Now, first of all, if you're brand new, you're not going to be doing Dragon's Lair B12. But once you're at a point where you're doing Dragon's Lair B12, where you can automatically get 6-star, when you're doing this level of dungeon, you're always going to get a 6-star rune. So you'll notice that all of these runes are 6-star at the very least. But you can see quality-wise, there's none that are white or green. There are blue and purple, and you could also get orange, but they're more rare to get. All right, so the most common one that you'll get from this level is the blue rune or the rare rune. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll look at those ones first. All right, so this first one is a violet, and it's slot 4. All right, so it tells you there, Violent, slot 4. This one has an innate stat, which is why it's called a resistant Violent rune. So it's a resistant Violent rune because it has innate resistance, 6% attached to it. This has, as a primary stat, flat defense. Now, I didn't talk about this before. When we were talking about the numbered slots, I started to mention it with slot number 1. Slot number 1 will always be flat attack. All right, slot number 3 will always be flat defense. Slot number 5 will always be flat HP. So your odd numbered 1, 3, 5 will always be attack, defense, and HP. The even numbered runes is where things get tricky and more complicated and random. The even numbered runes can all roll flat or percentage attack, defense, and HP. All of them. So that's 6 different things. In addition to that, you can have, on slot 2, can additionally roll speed. So that's 7 different things. Slot 4 can additionally roll crit damage or crit rate. So that's 8 total. Slot 6 can additionally roll accuracy and resistance. So that's, again, 8 total. So now you're talking about all those different rune types and all the different rune slots, and then within the even rune slots, they can all roll different primary statistics. And then within those different primary statistics, sometimes they can have innate stats, like this one does, and then there's the substats, which again are totally random. So the point here is that, yes, there's an awful lot going on when it comes to runes, and it will take some time to kind of figure it out. So tip number 1 is anything that rolls flat, meaning it's not a percentage on even numbered runes, 2, 4, and 6. Those ones are guaranteed sells. Okay, even when you're early on in the game, they're not something that you're going to want. It's really, it's unfortunate. It's a disservice that the game does. They really shouldn't even drop them. It's a total waste of time. And it's really annoying when you see legendary ones come out and they're flat. Because when you think about it, like this slot 4 rune has 8 different primary stats that it could proc. And out of those 8, 3 of them are like guaranteed sells. So, you know, I mean, the game, it's too bad that the game doesn't do something about that, because it is really unfortunate. There's a lot of runes that drop on 2, 4, 6 that are of these flat statistics, and you're just going to end up selling them. So this rune, nothing else really matters. It's a sell. Okay? So we'll look at the next blue rune. It's another violent rune, and look at this. It's another even number, slot 6, And again, it's flat statistic. So it's flat HP, doesn't matter about anything else. It's an automatic sell. All right, now here we've got a shield rune, slot 5. So slot 5 is fine. It's always going to be a flat HP. So there's nothing you can do about that primary wise. So now you got to look at the secondary market, if you will. All right, the substats. And for this shield rune, you are looking at resistance and flat defense. Now, the resistance is 7%. I will tell you that max roll for resistance would have been 8%. So it's, you know, fairly efficient. And flat defense, I don't know what the maximums are on the flat stats because, quite frankly, they're not what you're looking for. This rune is absolute trash. There is no sense in keeping this whatsoever, really at any level of the game. All right, this is a sell. This is not something that you're going to be interested in. So the last blue rune, and again, blue runes, rare runes, you really, in order for you to keep a rune, it's going to want to have some really good rolls and really good synergy. And hopefully I'll get an example of that to kind of show to you guys. But so same thing, this one's a slot 3. So again, primary stat doesn't matter on a slot 3, always going to be flat defense. This one has an innate, which is fine. You know, it's just extra. The only thing to note about innates is that when you get an extra innate, it does mean that you will not be able to roll that innate as a substat. So the fact that HP is an innate means that we wouldn't be able to roll flat HP underneath. But that's actually good in this instance because you wouldn't want to do that. The substats on this is HP percentage and accuracy. There is some synergy there between those two for a, you know, support type unit, especially on a resistance set. Endure is not the most popular sets. It's easy to get resistance in substats, so you don't typically put Endure runes on your monsters. A 2 set will add 20% resistance. Your monsters get resistance, and I'll definitely do a whole video on resistance accuracy, so that you guys have a little bit more on that. But so Endure runes, for me, have to be really good, really efficient, and have really good synergy in order to keep. So this is definitely not something that's worth keeping. All right, the HP is actually a min roll at 5% on a 6-star rune. That can roll up to 8%. Same thing with the accuracy. So accuracy is at least 7 out of 8. But again, this is not a quality rune. So this is going to be a sell as well. So now we've got 3 purple runes. So hopefully we'll have some better luck with this. So we got a shield rune, and again, right off the bat, flat defense. That's going to be an automatic sell. Now we've got a focus 5. All right, so it's always going to be flat HP. Unfortunately, this has an innate speed, and it's only a 4%. It's only a 4. So that's a minimum speed roll in an innate, which is unfortunate because you would typically want speed as a subset, especially on a focus rune. Typically, you would put focus runes on support type monsters that are going to be putting debuffs onto the enemy, right? Or things that, you know, need to stun or need to strip. It's typically support. It's not always support, but typically, because things that deal damage, you're usually not putting a focus rune set on them. You're usually putting, you know, something else like a blade set for crit rate, and you're just looking for accuracy and substats. So this, again, is not a keeper. It's got resistance, it's got attack percentage, low roll, and flat attack low. So this is, again, not good, not a keeper. And then the last one is a revenge rune. So at least it's got a percentage. It's a defense percentage on slot 2. It has flat defense and then a crit damage and a flat HP. So we didn't get any good runes. All right, it happens, okay? It happens. So we got this rune here. Again, defense percentage slot 2. You know, typically there's not a ton of monsters that you typically do this on. You know, Slot 2 is very popular. Speed, again, can only drop on slot 2. So that's a really, really popular one. Again, attack, really popular for units that deal damage. HP can be really popular for, you know, your tankier units. Defense on slot 2 tends to be reserved for defense scaling damage dealing units. And there are such units in the game that deal damage based on defense, and so you want them to be very high defense with crit rate and crit damage to deal their defense-based damage. So you could potentially use a defense slot 2 rune for a unit like that, but again, you'd probably want better synergy than what you're getting on a rune like this. So again, this is going to be a sell. So unfortunately, we got nothing but mana from that particular run. And we'll do more of these, and that could be fun to just do some more runs and go through and do some rune checks. What we'll do here, just to kind of go, since we didn't get to see any power-up, I'll show you guys here what I was talking about with the runes and being able to kind of know what something was. So we were looking at this rune before, and I'm just going to pull up here. I'm going to hit this power-up to pull up a new screen. And so from here you can see a couple of different things, right? You can see that it's plus 15. I cannot power it up anymore because that's the highest that it can be as far as the primary stat goes, and you can't increase the substats beyond plus 12. All right, this second button in here where it says Enchant, this is another aspect of the game. And we'll do a separate video on that because this has to do with some different resources in the game referred to as Grindstones and Gemstones. And these allow you to kind of manipulate the substats slightly, if you will. Now with these, with this, being able to tap in here, what this tells me is this tells me that the attack roll on this rune was only 5%. You can see here in the power-up, we saw it's 11%. But here I can see that it was 5%, and it was enhanced by me with a grindstone, an additional 6%. All right, and then you can see the same thing happened. HP went from 11% to 6%. Crit rate is 9% crit damage. Those ones can't be grinded. All right, now this third area is reappraisal. Again, we'll talk about that in another video, but that is where you could completely re-roll these. But what I like to do here is this tells you the default grade. So you can see there, it says right underneath, you know, you've got attack, resistance, right underneath there, it says default grade legend. So that lets me know, okay, this rune initially, when I got it, when it dropped as an orange rune. So like when we were just looking at all those runes, they were all blue and purple. This one, when it showed up on that screen, was orange. All right, and this tells me that when it dropped as orange, it had attack, crit damage, HP, and crit rate. I don't know what those numbers originally were, all right, but what I can deduce from that, right, is that knowing that it initially was an orange rune and it had all four of those present, knowing that I've increased it to plus 15, that means that it has that something increased 4 different times. So I know it was an attack because the minimum roll on an attack is 5, and that's what it is 5. So I know that nothing rolled into attack. Now crit damage is 18. So I know that crit damage can be anywhere from 4 to 7. Right? So crit damage definitely got multiple rolls, right? Because it definitely was more than 2, because, you know, or I should say, definitely was more than 1, because if it started at a 7 and it rolled a 7, it would only be 14. So it at least got 2 rolls. And then you're talking about HP, which is 11%, which means it had to at least roll once into HP. So that would be 2 rolls into crit damage, 1 roll into HP, and then to determine for sure, you look at crit rate. That's a 9%. Again, the range on crit rate is 4 to 6, and because I know it's 4 to 6, that means that that had to roll at least 1 time into crit rate, and there's our 4 rolls. So again, looking at this, I can determine attack, no rolls, crit damage, 2 rolls, HP, 1 roll, and crit rate, 1 roll. And that's our 4 rolls. All right. And then if I, go back further, I can even determine, based on that knowledge, I can know, okay, so attack didn't get any rolls. It's 5%. I know that the max was 8, so that's not particularly great. But then I know that crit damage rolled twice. Now the range on that, as again, can be between 4 and 7. It rolled twice, and it started off as something. So that's 3 total numbers that go into that. And I've got 18, right? So you could look at that as a 6 and a 6 and a 6. So that would be like it started off as a 6, and then it increased twice by 6, which is not terrible. If it rolled 3 times and everything was max, they would have all been 7s. It would have been 21. So I got 18 out of a maximum 21 for what it did. And then HP rolled once. Maximum roll on HP is 8. So that's only 11% out of a maximum 16. Not the best. That's like basically getting a 5, which would be a minimum, and a 6, which would be a 1 up from minimum. So not great rolls on HP. And then crit rate, very similar boat. We know it rolled once, and it's 9, so that means a minimum of 4, and then a 5. So same deal. Not super great rolls on this rune. The crit damage rolls were okay, but bad roll on attack, bad rolls on HP, bad rolls on crit rate. So it is what it is. That's Summoner's War for you. That's the game. So anyway, I hope you guys got something out of this Rune 101 tutorial. Again, this was really intended for people brand new to the game, and really to give you a good insight into runes, how integral they are, and how important they are. We'll get more into kind of detailed builds and things like that later, and hopefully you guys got something out of it. I'll definitely do more rune things, but if anybody wants to see anything particular or has particular questions about runes, please let me know in the comments, because that's why I'm doing these. I want to help people out who are interested in the game, because I love the game. I think it's great. It's a grind, absolutely, and you definitely need to farm those runes. So I'm going to go ahead and do some more farming, because Lord knows I need to. And yeah, so hope you guys watched it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.